Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aris from TechChill, and for the next hour and a half, I'm going to be your host as we dive deeper into future of business in digital Europe. We've got just a little over a week before we kick off the 2 weeks of TechChill 2021 with Baltic Tech Day on May 7th. So it is definitely time to start stretching and warming up for it. And that's exactly what we're going to do here today. Now, one of the main topics of TechChill 2021 is digital transformation. So it really makes sense that for this side event, we are teaming up with our friends from Dokabit. They are the biggest electronic signature solutions provider in the Baltics and Iceland, building simple, easy to use, and accessible technologies for e-signing and e-identification. Today with us is Ilmārs Arsenovic. He's the country manager of Dokabit here in Latvia. And I would like to invite Ilmārs to give a quick welcome to our viewers.
Thank you, Aris. Ladies and gentlemen, startup people, investors, and of course, TechChill team, I'm really proud to greet you all at this TechChill warm-up event. I really hope that you will be warmed up till May 7, when the real party will begin. At Dokabit, we are really proud to be supporters of this year's TechChill event, which is one of the biggest tech and startups focused events in Baltic countries. We are also coming from the startup environment. We have grown from the small startup to a strong team that has a presence in 5 countries and operates in a lot more and ensures that everyone can sign documents electronically and in a safe environment. The other part of our mission is to help companies organize their work so that document management inside the company and with customers is not a constant struggle. Already a year, we are mostly living online. Some things after the pandemic will change, some will not. However, at some point, the pandemic will help Europe to reach its goals in terms of digital development. This year, in March, European Commission presented a vision for Europe's digital transformation by 2030. And according to the European Commission, by 2030, 80% of citizens will use a digital ID solution. More than 90% of small and medium enterprises will reach at least a basic level of digital intensity. And 75% of companies will use cloud computing services, big data, and artificial intelligence. So we decided to dedicate this event to a discussion among companies that are already assisting the transition to digitalization and talk about what the future looks like for all of us who live and work in Europe. So in the beginning, I'll start with a short overview of the state of electronic signing in Europe, and later we will move towards electronic identity, and we will also talk about data storage and clouds. So stay tuned and let's get this party started.
Thank you, Ilmārs, for the warm welcome words. We're definitely happy to have Dokabit on board for TechChill 2021 as our supporters. And as Ilmārs mentioned, digital transformation doesn't refer only to e-signatures and is a much broader subject, as most of you have probably learned, especially over the last year. Thus, today you'll be hearing from various speakers covering some other aspects of digital transformation. But I think that it's actually enough babbling from me, so let's jump right into the content. But before we start, I would like to mention that if you have any questions for today's speakers, please leave them in the chat and we'll try to address them later on down the line after the panel discussion at the end of the event. So just leave your questions and we will make sure that they are answered. That being said, I will give the floor back to Ilmārs, who will introduce us to why e-signing is the new normal and how, just like Thanos in the Marvel universe, it has become inevitable. So Ilmārs, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All right, e-signing, a new normal. In the beginning, I just wanted to introduce a little bit what is Dokabit. So Dokabit is the biggest e-signature-based solution provider in the Baltics and Iceland, where we offer businesses and public sector SaaS solutions for authentication, signing, and validation processes. Docubit is a company that follows the highest industry standards. Our services are built from the ground up according to all EIDAS technical requirements. We are also the first qualified trust service provider for e-signature validation in Baltics. Additionally, we have implemented and certified our information security management system. We are trusted by a wide range of companies, starting from really small businesses to organizations like banks, telecommunication operators, and of course, governments. So today's topic, what we wanted to share today are some e-signature usage trends. COVID has speeded up digitalization massively. We looked up the trends of people's behaviors from approximately beginning of lockdown in the Baltics and the same period a year before. So this is the chart where we can see the new e-signature users that have onboarded and started using e-signature. First lockdown was the most impactful, probably because it was the most unexpected. Looking from another perspective, the trend of active e-signers, these are the users that at least once signed something in our portal during the given periods. So here we can also see that the usage of e-signatures is increasing quite steadily. And of course, the signed documents chart shows something similar, a big spike during the first lockdown, and after a more steady, a more steady but still rapid growth. So combining everything together, we can only draw a conclusion that e-signing of documents has been increasing and will keep increasing. Therefore, we can say that digitalization of businesses is inevitable. And here is one more interesting trend about the usage of e-identity tools. These are the most popular EIDs used for signing documents in Docubit portal. What is interesting here is that Smart ID increase was the biggest, which was more than 700%. So this just shows that there are new e-signature tools appearing in the market. In a Smart ID case, it's quite an innovative tool. For example, with the ability to upgrade the account with biometric identification that allows their users to get qualified e-signature fully remotely. So the question, why is the use of e-signatures growing? Well, there are many reasons. One of them is speed. According to one research, speed and convenience is what matters the most to consumers. Another research shows that if purchasing process is too difficult, then customers are pretty likely to switch brands. In regards of e-signatures, then one success case example is our client, a telecommunication company that reduced their time of signing the documents with their clients from few days to few hours, meaning customers get onboarded much faster and can start using their services almost right away. Another reason, which is very relevant today, is being remote. One survey shows that 74% of employers plan to permanently switch employees to remote work after COVID crisis ends. So this is definitely something to consider. Another success case is our client, a recruitment company. They hires their employees in just 5 minutes remotely, and in less than a year, they already have signed over 20,000 contracts. And of course, e-signed documents are paperless. Administrative tasks, such as paperwork, are compared to be almost as equally as ineffective as someone checking their social media. In this topic, another success case, one of our clients, a real estate company, have to record the housing conditions, meaning they take pictures of houses and flats. Before, they use it to print them and sign each printed picture separately. After all the processes have been moved to Docobit, everything has changed. The mentioned specific documents can be confirmed and signed in one platform by adding digital photos to one document, uploading it to the portal, and signing. And at this point, not only a reasonable amount of money is saved, but also the process is much simple, and there is no need to additionally print photos and sign them separately. And the last reason, which I think is one of the most important ones, is of course improved customer and user experience. There are also some researches that shows that, for example, 66% of adults feel that valuing their time is the most important thing a company can do for a customer, and 43% would even pay more for greater convenience. So in regard of electronic signatures, some companies are already accepting electronically signed documents from their clients, but most of them do it like this. They just send these documents as an attachment to the client and ask them to sign. So client have to download it, find a way to sign this document, then of course, again, upload it to the email and send it back. So what smarter companies do, they take care of the signing experience on behalf of client. So how it works with Docobit services is that a company invites their client to sign a document, and the client clicks a link in the email, and right there in a new tab, this document opens, and the client can immediately see this document and sign the document with his preferred electronic identity tool. So this way, company is taking care of signing experience on behalf of customer. So now that we know the reasons why e-signatures are growing, let's look at some most common mistakes, especially when choosing the e-signature service provider. So eIDAS compliant e-signatures comprise of a number of elements that make them secure. However, lack of knowledge often leads to these most common mistakes. First of all, e-signatures have to comply with eIDAS standards, and if they don't, then they are basically not valid. Another point is long-term validity, which actually no one really knows that e-signatures can expire, but they do expire if you don't take care of them. Another point is qualified timestamps, which are closely related to validity, meaning that if there is no timestamp, there is no way in the future to know if signature was valid at the time of signing. So this is also important. And last point, consumers sometimes are being misled. Sometimes companies claim that they comply with eIDAS regulations, but the whole truth is not told. For example, if you use simple drawn e-signatures, then you would not know for sure your client's identity, because simple e-signatures can be done by anyone, like by anyone else, pretending to be that person. So simple e-signatures are, of course, part of eIDAS regulation, but their legal force is the lowest one. So what to do to avoid these mistakes? Well, first of all, choose eIDAS compliant e-signatures, not the ones that are like digitally scribbled images, like sometimes when you sign with a finger on your phone. Choose electronic signatures that are like federated eIDs, like Smart ID, National ID cards, or Mobile ID. Another point is remembering that by default, e-signatures have an expiration date. This, of course, depends on how long you need to save the document and keep it valid, but this is definitely something to consider. And the last point, of course, do a proper research on e-signing service providers. look for the ones that support eID tools-based e-signatures, the ones that use timestamps in each signing, and the ones that take care of long-term validity of your signed documents. At the end, I just wanted to mention that these things can sometimes be and sound complicated, and our goal at Docobit is to make e-signature use as simple as possible, so that you don't have to worry about all these things. And if you have any questions, just feel free to contact me, and I will be really happy to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilmars, for the presentation. I can mention that I'm actually part of the statistic. I was kind of slow on getting my e-signature, and so I did it only towards the end of 2020. I was kind of forced to do it because I just received an already e-signed document asking me to send back. So, but the process was actually quite quick, and it has definitely come into handy ever since. So thank you. Then moving on to the next point on our agenda, our next speaker is Sanita Meijere. She's the head of business relations at SK ID Solutions, a company focusing on international e-identity solutions. And most of you probably are familiar with one of their better known products, which is Smart ID, used for authentication in online banking and various other services. And Sanita herself is a PhD candidate in IT management and has more than 15 years of experience in the IT solutions industry, serving both local and international vendors. So today, Sanita will introduce you to some of the things we can do to promote digital transformation. Sanita, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Aris. Thank you for the great introduction. So the presentation, I believe, as well is available, so we can start. I don't see yet the presentation on screen.
Yeah, we don't see it yet, Sanita.
Yeah, because it was there and
okay, it should appear soon. No, it disappeared again. Try opening the presentation and keep it on the screen, please.
So can you see it now?
Yes. Just
Okay.
put it on full screen, please.
So we can move on, yes? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, first of all, to Docobit and TechChill for this great opportunity to be here and to share both my experiences from the PhD studies research and as well practical application in IT world, in IT industry and our customers. And I want to share with you today some of lessons learned, what we can do to promote this digital transformation and what could be probably those aspects and obstacles we need to keep in mind to happen it more smoothly. And I organized this story in 3 building blocks. One is general preconditions, the framework or the landscape, which would enable even better digital transformation. So a bit broader view on this topic. Then what are those solutions and how solutions should be that the users, us society, are ready to adopt them and start to use. And the final aspect is what companies, when they are going through this process digitalization, what they need to keep in mind to be successful and make sure that the employees, counterparties, other stakeholders of the organizations are ready to adopt those solutions. And yes, a little bit about the SKID solutions. Ars already mentioned that our most popular product is Smart ID. But of course, I'm really happy to be part of this organization, as we are really enablers of this digital transformation in the Europe and even wider. And we do provide those electronic identification tools, timestamping services, organizational certificates, maybe better known as ESIL certificates. So yes, we really are looking forward for this digital future of Europe and doing business remotely and digitally. But let's start with this first block, so-called e-readiness. And those topics that should be covered in every country, actually, who wants to go towards this digitalization, are coming from Economic Intelligence Unit. And so it all starts with infrastructure. If we want to be digital, there has to be some base for it, so ground for it, some core stones, and then this is infrastructure, communications, mobile network coverage, internet coverage, high-speed internet. Without that, there wouldn't be any options to develop the direction of digital transformation. Then when we have in place this infrastructure, then there is business adoption. So business should be ready to start to use it and to use it smart, efficiently, and benefit from it. And then the next aspect is the society and culture. So we can have business organizations who want to speak with their consumers and customers in digital manner, but if there are some lack of trust, some perceptions about doing things digitally in the society and conservative culture, then we have to work on this awareness generation and overcome those society barriers. So we as society as well are very important in all this game. And nevertheless important are the laws or rules and regulations. So if we speak and look about the Europe, then at least in European Union, it's pretty well organized from European level. And it's interesting to see how countries' experience differs. So some countries are very good in adapting the laws towards this digital transformation and enabling remote businesses. But they don't have tools, practical tools to use it. And there are countries where are practical usable tools, but still not enough or well-organized laws in place. So this shall be harmonized as well. And then, of course, those countries who are the most successful in this digital transformation direction, they have very strong governmental vision towards it. And this digital transformation is like country's #1 priority, and it's visible both in policy documents and practical actions. And here I would say, again, in Europe, we are lucky because for Europe, it's clearly defined that the digital transformation is #1 priority, and it goes hand in hand with the other one important priority, environmental sustainability. And digital transformation is seen as precondition as well to ensure environmental sustainability. So yeah, these aspects is the core framework to be harmonized and look at if we want to be more digital. And now a little summary from the many researches done how to make sure that the society, we, each and everyone, are open to those digital solutions, digital tools, and are ready to use them on daily basis. And there, SIT is so important, and it is stated that 90% of any public or commercial organization success depends on IT. Then this is why it is so widely researched topic, and then the focus is on this user acceptance. And what are those facilitating factors that can promote this user acceptance? And one of those elements that are being discovered is the gamification of the solution. Even it is a business solution, there should be some gamification element so the users accept it faster. Then proper change management, how this solution is being delivered to us as a users. Our perception of the safety of this solution, security, there should be overthought as well, training, guidelines, user manuals, how to use this solution, maybe training videos, so we can feel comfortable and familiar with this. And actually, the safety, security, and timely, proper training are three cornerstones that build the most important facilitating factor, the trust. If we trust in a specific solution, then we are ready to start to use it. And of course, for many people, if the solution is, of course, paid solutions, they have to see value for the money. So we cannot skip this monetary aspect as well. There shall be some tangible benefits. And the final topic, this relates to the organizations, how to make sure that the organizations are successful in this digital transformation process, and it is proper change management. So number of practical applications show that when you introduce new IT solutions, as well the same that enable us doing business digitally, it's still a change, and it shall go through classical change management steps. And for those digitalization projects, the most important steps are feasibility study, timely communication from the moment of project initiation, the first idea, till the very end of the project, celebrating small wins. So we have this digitalization project, we divide it in smaller milestones. Whenever any milestone is reached, we have to celebrate it company-wide. Then strong decision making, being at the time flexible enough when it is required, doing maybe some things agile, and at the same time still keeping the main focus, the main goal. Then as well for organizations and for their employees, the training of the potential solution has to be very well overthought and timely enough, and always keeping the momentum. So if these 6 blocks are met, then it really shall ensure the success of this project outcome. And another important aspect, if we speak about the organizations, is the complementary team. So people who are responsible for implementing this project, who makes things happen. Of course, there are very diverse IT projects. So this complementary team will be based on this project idea, but the right team in the right place as well is important. And for companies, final 2 aspects are trustworthiness of the partner or vendor. So if the employees of the organization will have trust in this partnership, they will be more welcoming as those new solutions, and as well as the organizations, the security of the solution nowadays is extremely important. So thank you. These are the findings I really wanted to share with you, and I hope some of them will stay in your minds and will help to make the Europe more digital.
Thank you, Sanita, for the presentation. I definitely enjoyed one of the facilitating aspects, which is gamification. And I really hope that more and more sort of service providers will use this, because I've definitely found it very helpful for various things in life, especially when it comes to apps and software solutions. So, okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
Moving on to our third speaker, Rasa Gobe. She is the board member of Latvian IT infrastructure company Dati Group, which specializes in cloud deployment and system integration. Rasa has consulting experience in IT management, gained both locally here in Riga, Latvia, and also internationally in Boston, Massachusetts. And today, Rasa will guide us through the buzzwords that we're constantly hearing every day regarding new technological solutions, and will help us to understand what IT trends can actually be implemented in our work, and which ones are just buzz. So, Rasa, here you go. Sorry, Rasa, you're muted.
Here we go. Oh, yeah. Can't start without a bit of a technical hustle, can we? Hope everything is fine now. Should be. Okay, so thank you for the introduction. And as was briefly outlined, my name is Rasa, and I work for one of the most prominent IT infrastructure companies in Latvia, Dati Group. And we have been in business since 1990s. So we've seen infrastructure development starting from traditional to cloud and to hybrid cloud. We mostly operate in Latvia, though we have expanded in the Baltics as well. But if you haven't heard much about us, that is completely fine, because truth be told, not many of us are concerned about IT infrastructure on a daily basis. We do see the technology that changes our lives, we hear the buzzwords, but we don't necessarily think about, let's say, the road towards it. And so today I decided to dedicate a bit of time to talk about one of the aspects that was actually mentioned by Sanita previously, about infrastructure that ensures that digitization can happen, that digital transformation can take place. And a disclaimer, I am not a psychic, and I do maintain that our predictions about future are seldom very precise. So in order to predict what life will look like in the future, and in order to get a grasp of what is buzz and what is actually a trend that is changing the way we work and the way we live, the best way to do it is to actually look in the past. How did we predict that the future will look and that technologies will develop, for example, 10 years ago? And this is one way to look at it. It is the top 10 strategic technology trends 10 years ago in 2011, as indicated by Gartner, which is one of the most commonly used references when it comes to technology forecasting. And what we already can see here is basically that the left column shows the trends that were already on the list in 2011, and the right side shows what were the buzzworthy news of the year. And one interesting thing to note here, for example, is that cloud computing was indicated as one of the main strategic trends already in 2011. And then you can see also some aspects, some technology trends that have come to life in the last 10 years. For example, usage of video, both for personal purposes and in business, usage of social analysis to predict our behaviors and to ensure that, for example, marketing is tailored to our needs. Just as storage class memory and developments in storage have taken place in the past 10 years. So we see that there were some trends that we didn't manage to achieve in the previous 10 years, some that we didn't manage. But what's interesting is that we noticed that some buzzwords were already present way back. So fast forward 5 years to 2016. And we can see that once again, there are approximately 5 trends. So half of the list consists of technologies that were predicted to change our lives already in previous years. And then half of it is relatively new and buzzworthy. And what we see here is a lot of the buzzwords that we still hear today. For example, AR and VR, 3D printing, IoT, the device mesh, which is essentially infrastructure intended for IoT to work, and advanced machine learning. I'm quite certain that most of you have heard these trends, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, and fast forward 5 more years to today. So how does it look currently? And currently what we can see is that a lot of the trends on this year's list are actually, once again, quite similar to what was mentioned in previous years. But some take it a step further. For example, Internet of Behaviors is an extension of not just connecting and devices communicating between each other, but also analyzing and pushing forward this approach that we connect behaviors, for example. Total experience. So everything can be a tailored experience to our needs. And once again, you can see on this list, we didn't go far from cloud in the 10 years. So distributed cloud is still on the list, just as AI engineering, so artificial intelligence, didn't go far from the list. So what I'm trying to take a stab at is essentially that if we look at the past 10 years of trends and buzzwords, we see a pattern of certain buzzworthy tendencies being noted and being listed as important. So next step is understanding if you see a trend appearing every time consistently for example, 10 years. So what is actually happening behind the curtain? So how is the technology developing? If we don't talk about the trend itself, so what is the technology development timeline? And here I selected a few buzzwords that were shown on the previous lists as noteworthy in the past 10 years, and drew a timeline of how they developed throughout the history to this day. And the first is IoT. And as we can see, the first IoT was actually a vending machine reporting temperature and Coca-Cola supply. And that was already in 1980s. It made the trend list only in 2015. We can see a similar tendency when it comes to artificial intelligence. The term was actually coined in 1956. And on the same conference where it was first mentioned, the first proof of concept was also presented. But the trend, the buzzword, made the list only in 2005. So quite a gap in there. And then finally, cloud computing. We see a similar difference between when the term is first mentioned, when there is a significant technological breakthrough, and when it is mentioned as a noteworthy trend and it becomes a buzzword. So first mention of cloud is actually in an internal document in the 1990s. Just to clarify, the term was there already before and the concept had been proven, but the specific word cloud used for it was coined in 1990s. And then we see that the first already commercial installation is in 2002, while only in 2011, cloud computing makes the list. So the main question on everyone's mind, if infrastructure is so important for digitization and for promoting and advancing technologies, what's taking so long? Why are these trends not coming to life as quickly as one might expect? Why does it take 50 years in some cases? And here I would actually highly urge you to read the article that's linked at the bottom of the slide, since it is an overview of actually buzzwords from the last 200 years. And essentially what it boils down to is that there were technologies that were hyped for centuries and they didn't really change the way we work or live. And there were some that were heavily hyped up and they actually did change our lives and us. And the technologies that changed us are electricity, telecommunications, and computing. And I find that it says a lot about how they have changed our lives, considering that we're meeting on this digital platform and that we're mostly talking about IT developments. However, technologies that didn't make the cut, that didn't change our daily lives as much as had been expected, were space exploration and nuclear power. So to understand the difference between the ones that do change the way we work and live and why some technologies necessarily don't, some aspects that were mentioned by Sanita were also highlighted by this research, and we at Dati Group, offering infrastructure solutions, have also noticed is that in order for a technology trend to actually be implemented in work and in your daily life, there has to be the needed infrastructure for the development, and you have to have notable economies of scale, which was the case for nuclear power and for space travel, for example, that due to safety regulations, you really couldn't cut corners. And it didn't matter that you're building the 101st nuclear power plant, you still have to abide by the regulations, which made it costly. And since there was no way to reduce those costs, it was really complicated to further develop the solution, the ecosystem needed for it to actually be usable in a day-to-day life and in our working environments. So if there is no business to be made with the technology, the start will be rough. And so, boiling this down, if cost-efficient infrastructure is what we need, then what is next? What can we expect? And as highlighted in the previous trend lists, it was pretty clear that cloud computing has been here already for a while, and it's expected that its usage will only increase. So if I were to bet my money on something, I would say that you can reasonably expect that deployment of cloud technologies in various forms is something that you can expect for businesses in the years to come. And the aspect that I would like to highlight is that it might differ, the format in which we deploy cloud. So, and to highlight it a bit, you might see developments when it comes to cloud in the area of public cloud, private cloud, or recently we've been hearing more about distributed cloud or federated cloud. And just to double click on that, so what can you expect when deploying a cloud? And I would say that the experience of cloud deployment depends quite heavily on the type of cloud you choose to deploy. If it's the public variety, I would say that most businesses have at least some experience when it comes to cloud, specifically in this realm. So deploying and using public cloud solutions. It's relatively easy, a few clicks away. It's easily scalable. You can store a lot of data, and you don't have to bother about your own equipment and about your own security policies. The setup is relatively inexpensive. So from this brief overview of the solutions, it seems like a walk in the park to deploy cloud solutions. However, we've been seeing a rise in demand and usage of a different type of cloud. And if the company chooses to deploy private cloud, then the expectations of how this will go should be adjusted slightly differently. So private cloud is essentially a deployment of cloud on your private infrastructure. It's still easily scalable. You still have large storage capabilities, which helps to leverage what data can give to your business, but it's more customizable. And a lot of the management is executed or at least overlooked by you and your company. It definitely gives you more control, but you have to understand that you might need additional experience, understanding, or a wish to learn when it comes to deploying private cloud. So how does work change when using this relatively new type of infrastructure? or the type of infrastructure that more than 70% of companies are expected to be using in the coming years. So there's definitely big benefits, and you can expect business process automation because the infrastructure is scalable to companies' needs. You can definitely also expect ease of continuous operations, since cloud tends to be more reliable. It has built-in self-healing and other features which ensures that it is reliable and secure. There's definitely a lot of potential to be achieved and grasped through leveraging big data analytics, and also ease of app deployment and maintenance, and small initial capex. Whereas when it comes to what to expect from a customer's experience, if your company is to deploy a cloud, then definitely the services are more responsive, they are faster, and in many aspects, they're also safer, which is part of why the solutions that were presented earlier today, most of them are cloud-based or cloud-native. And this is just a nugget for thought and consideration in the future. So if you are to implement IT trends in work today, I would say that based on the analysis of past developments of trends, we can see that it takes a while for IT trends to really hit the ground floor, but the ones that do are the ones that can relatively easily be tested and scaled. And from that aspect, I would encourage all of you to just try and test out what works for your company, what works for you, especially when it comes to infrastructure, since infrastructure can really make or break whether you can implement new technologies or whether they turn out just to be another buzzword. Thank you. If you want to connect, here's the information.
Thank you, Rasa. It's definitely interesting to think about that some of the buzzwords have actually existed for decades before they actually become buzzwords. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I would actually like to add another milestone to the IoT timeline, and it is from May 14th to May 16th, 2021. Then we will have the LNT IoT Hackathon as part of the 2 TechChill weeks. So if we have any viewers that are familiar with IoT, so Internet of Things technologies, this is a great chance to apply and play with some impressive tech that you probably wouldn't have access to otherwise. So thank you again, Rasa. You can stay on the stage as we're moving on to the panel discussion. And I would like to invite also back Ilmars and Sanita. And I would also like to introduce you to our panel moderator, Julia Gifford. She is the co-founder of content marketing and PR agency True6, as well as the English editor at Labs of Latvia. And she's also the alumnus of many Latvian startups, including Printful, Desktime, and others. So she definitely has quite a few broad fields of experience. So I will hand over to Julia to continue about the future of business in digital Europe.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ari, for that introduction. Thank you, speakers, for very interesting presentations. I really found it fascinating to hear more in depth about your topics, which admittedly aren't the kinds of topics that you spend a lot of time on a day-to-day basis thinking about. And while we're still on the topic of clouds, I wanted to divert my first question to Rasa while we're still thinking about infrastructure and buzzwords and all that. And Rasa, you mentioned that in order for these new technologies to develop, what they need is cost-efficient infrastructure. I just started to wonder, is the cloud considered cost-efficient, or is it still in the process of becoming cost-efficient? What's the general feeling around that? Or does it need to still be developed?
Okay. So cloud from its inception and on already a concept basis is cost efficient. Because essentially what you're doing is, if, for example, with traditional infrastructure, you had dedicated equipment with dedicated functions, then for cloud, you leverage the possibilities of virtualization and orchestration to essentially manage the physical resources in a more optimal way. And if you further that, that means that you need less equipment to essentially ensure the same amount of data storage, the same capacity and capabilities of computation. So from that aspect, from the very first day, cloud was a way to reduce costs when it comes to equipment. And also a bit that I mentioned, orchestration, it's just all about centralized management. And we know that centralizing management of anything to a certain level can ensure that we don't have to spend that much time. We don't have to specialize so narrowly into ensuring that we can manage the resources, which saves time. It eases the process and admittedly is more cost efficient. And when it comes to whether we're at the stage where we can ensure this already for companies, I would say that definitely. As you saw, the first installations of public cloud and public cloud offerings were already in 2002. The same are available and accessible to businesses today. Also in Latvia. Latvia is no exception in this aspect. And I would say that also private cloud has shown significant developments and is already a very cost-efficient alternative. The technology is there. It's mostly about creating and understanding that we have a use case for it.
Incredible, thank you. So it sounds like we have the foundation and we are now looking to founders to make use of it and build on that technology, which is really exciting. And yeah, hopefully we will see all kinds of applications at the IoT hackathon during TechChill. So very much so looking forward to that. So moving back to the e-signing, e-ID topic, I want to go back a little bit to the basics. And so my question would be, I guess, both for Ilmars and for Sanita. And what got me thinking was that this technology, the ability to legally verify or legally sign a document, it seemed impossible when it came around. It seemed like something futuristic, and I'm just wondering, what is it that changed that made this technology possible? What makes an e-signature valid, and what changed in our kind of ecosystem that all of a sudden made it possible for these solutions to come into our lives?
Okay, maybe I can try to start answering this question. I would say that there are several aspects, and I would like to refer back into this presentation about this core framework. So first of all, we have the legal base. So it's very well overthought what should be this legally binding electronic signature. What are its components? So it's recognized everywhere, and not just within one company. And then when we have this legal base, then hand goes as well those technologies. So technologies has developed that we can create such devices. They are secure. We have different security algorithms in place. We have the smartphones who are capable to run those applications. Without that, it wouldn't work as well. So it's altogether this legal framework and technological capabilities which are developing. The same biometry to remotely onboard new users, the same as it can be done in physical environment. Without that, without smartphones who can ensure this biometrical solutions, it wouldn't work. So, Ilmars, maybe you can add some.
Well, you said most of the things, but of course, Electronic signatures actually have a really long history. I think like 100 years ago, there was like first electronic signatures coming from telegraphs or something. But yeah, recently regulations like EIDAS came into force, and therefore they are just becoming regulated, and people can just trust them.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up question for this then would be, if we know that e-signatures and EID processes are legally binding, they are secure, they are tied to an individual by biometry and therefore not copyable by anyone else, why isn't it that we're seeing online voting as a widespread application yet? I feel like every time the voting time comes around, we have the same conversation, and then it boils down to the cybersecurity people saying, no, it's not safe. What would your answer be to this?
Again, well, it starts with this our core legal rights. If we do voting, then our vote shouldn't be associated with us. The voting should be anonymous. And to make this work in digital environment, it's a little bit different than the e-signing. In e-signing, we must be sure that the person who does the signature is really the person. And it's all about how we verify and identify correctly the person, because we take responsibility that we say, this person really did sign this a certain document. And in e-voting, it's totally opposite. We must ensure that the person who votes is the person who votes, but still this vote shouldn't be associated with this person, because that's stated in the Constitution, in the basic our rights. And this is the trickiest part, how to organize this process, that it can happen digitally, that we know that the person has voted, but we don't know for whom the person has voted. And of course, there are, like Estonia is a great example, where e-voting happens already several times in a row. But it's not like click, we cannot do it in a few days. So it's a longer process, and we are getting there. Someday we will be there.
All right, looking forward to it. One thing I should mention to our viewers, if you have any questions for our speakers, you can type them in the comments section, and we will ask them ourselves. So by all means, if you have any questions, you can ask them. But if we move on and take advantage of this time that we have together, I guess my next follow-up question would be for Samita. You mentioned that change management is one of the core aspects of what has to happen for us to adopt these new technologies. And you mentioned these different steps that have to happen, the celebrating milestones and the training and the and all of these different kind of steps. And it sounds like a very major project. And I got the feeling that you were talking about this change management within an organization, like a corporation, for example. Do you think that these processes can be applied wider to society as a whole? How can we accelerate the process of onboarding these digital solutions to wider society?
Yeah, most of those steps can be applicable, and as I mentioned, for the wider society as well, important aspects is this training, meaning that they know how to use the solution, as well the same this feeling of safety and security and trust. And how we can create it with the same steps as for the organization when we start to create this user awareness with timely communication. So basically, those solutions like ID cards in certain countries, they have been successful saying thanks to this fact that there is money invested in the solution itself and as well in promoting the solution. So we always need to keep in mind to create this user awareness and this communication. So otherwise there won't be miracles.
Certainly. So on the topic of adopting these technologies, my question would be for Ilmaz, who in your presentation, you mentioned that you're seeing 4 times user growth over this past year of pandemic life in general. And you mentioned that you're seeing that people are willing to pay for speed and for convenience. And I'm wondering if you think that this trend is going to continue even after we return, at least partially, to in-person workspaces and that sort of thing. Do you expect that there will be a decrease in e-signature signing practices, or is this a trend that you expect to continue to grow?
This is something that is definitely gonna continue to grow because even before COVID, electronic signature use was already growing. COVID just speeded it up. So companies that already adopted these technologies, there's like no reason to go back to something, some older procedures and do something that is less efficient. And sometimes our clients say that that when they started using our services, that it's a shame that they didn't know before about these possibilities and solutions. And now when they were forced to start using them, then they were like amazed that something like this exists and it helps them to be more efficient and save money and just be more productive.
Yes, and on this topic, the e-signature space is quite saturated. In fact, in Latvia, we even have a state-created platform, e-paraksts. How would you recommend, how do people choose which platform to use?
Well, of course, when you choose an e-signing platform, you have to do a research on what this platform does and what they offer. So if, for example, in the beginning, you have to look if this platform offers legally binding signatures that are made according to eIDAS regulation. You have to check if this company is offering qualified timestamps, so to make sure that your documents are secure and tamper-proof. And of course, the last thing is long-term validity that I mentioned in my presentation, that electronically signed documents can actually lose their validity by the time. So this is also one important thing, that if you have to keep your documents for a longer time and keep them valid, this is also an important factor to look for.
Okay, good to know. One question that I think is relevant in general to this sphere is the topic of cybersecurity. And I've got the feeling that that is one of the biggest kind of issues for people's adoption of digital tools, whether that's e-signing or cloud tools. So I guess my question for you panelists would be, how much weight should be given to cybersecurity threats, and can they be minimized, or is that a reason not to pursue these tools? Maybe I can ask Rasa to start us off.
Sure. So when it comes to cybersecurity, it has been an acute topic for the last at least 5 to 10 years. As we deploy more and more technologies that are essentially, well, they operate thanks to the networking we have. And it is a common misperception, a common fear, that if we ensure that the communication happens somewhere in the cloud or over the network, then automatically it's not secure. And I would say that that has been a concern for technology companies for a while, and there have been great advancements also when it comes to cybersecurity as well. And for one, to mention, related to today's topic, also cybersecurity when it comes to infrastructure, then we must mention that security is one of the aspects why to actually deploy newer technologies instead of sticking to what you had in the past. Because if it's, let's put it in a very trivial way, if it's a simple toolbox that you manage purely on your own, then an intelligent threat will cause it much more harm than if you have a maybe newer, more complex toolkit, an infrastructure solution, but that can be also protected in accordance to the potential threats. And in case of, for example, cloud computing, then what we see is both for public and private cloud, security is a major concern. And it's also something that is essentially built in as one of the differentiating factors. For example, private cloud is the choice for many companies purely and specifically because it can ensure the kind of data security that is required and needed by the companies.
Thank you. Ilmar, do you have anything to add on the topic of concerns about cybersecurity?
Yeah, of course. It's mostly a matter of choosing the right service provider. So again, I just wanted to remind, if you choose a service provider, a SaaS solution, you have to do a research on this service provider. So usually you would see like if they have any certifications. Are there if you're choosing the e-signature service provider, are they qualified trust service provider in European Union and stuff like that? So you have to do the research. And like these days, SaaS solutions are pretty secure, and if they're certified, then you have nothing to worry about. Even more than that others are using it. So.
And the certification that people should be looking for is the eIDAS that you mentioned.
There are, of course, different type of certifications. eIDAS is the one that's coming from the regulation of e-signatures, but there are others like ISO certifications for information security management system and stuff like that.
Okay, so do your research, choose a certified provider, and you should be good. And Sanita, do you have any comments?
Oh, well, this is a topic I could speak like day and night about. But basically, I want to emphasize one important aspect. Those companies who provide those digital solutions. Let's take the same example, SKID solutions. So we really invested time and resources to build a smart ID solution. There are more than 3 million using it in the Baltic countries, and then we have this great responsibility to care about this security, and we do it because for companies who want to be in the market, the most important is the reputation, and the easiest way how to damage the reputation and the trust into the solutions is to experience some serious breach of securities, and basically it can be end of the business. So any company who provides services to their customers and the users, they have to care about the security in the first place. So certifications, continuous improvement of the solution from security point of view, addressing latest trends continuously, not just like waiting annual security audit from some external auditors, but doing it continuously, investigating the trends, the attacks, so organized cybersecurity crime activities, and really all the time upgrading those security features. It's always the battle between us as the good IT guys and those bad IT guys. So we should be in the first place.
Right, so vigilance by everyone is required. One topic that I wanted to bring up and throw to you, panelists, is regarding the statistic that Ilmaz mentioned in his early talk, that the European Commission expects that by 2030, 80% of the population will have adopted e-signatures. Do you believe, as professionals in your own areas, that this is even feasible, considering that we have a population that is diverse in age and beliefs, and who might be more, I don't know, maybe concerned about adopting these kinds of digital solutions? Is this 80% target milestone, is it something that we can realistically expect in the future?
Well, maybe I can start to comment. I really like one very famous IT quote. We overestimate things we can reach in 3 years, but we underestimate the things we can reach in 10 years. So I definitely believe this is possible. And even if we speak about the Europe, it's pretty well known fact that, let's say, such a huge country as Germany, they are pretty conservative in the way how they do business and then how they start using new technologies. But even from Germany, we receive pretty constant requests. They don't have their own tools as we have in Baltics, and then they ask how it is possible to start to use Smart ID in Germany. So it's promising.
Okay, so even companies or countries like Germany are in the process. Ilmaz, do you think that this is, I mean, seeing your own statistics, do you believe that this is feasible?
Definitely, of course. Even from our countries, I think Smart ID at least has done a great job, and their numbers are amazing. So I think it's easily, at least in Latvia and the Baltic states, it's easily achievable. Other countries are also showing good results. If I'm not wrong, then I think in Norway, the bank ID is used already by 99% of population that is over like 20 years old or something like that. So I think it's definitely reachable, of course.
Mm-hmm. And Rasa, in your opinion, I know that maybe EIDs and e-signatures aren't necessarily your specialty, but knowing what you know about buzzwords and trends and developments, is this something that we can expect in the next 9 years?
I would like to agree that we tend to underestimate what we can do in such a long time period. And I would say that we're already relatively close, and there aren't that many roadblocks, especially listening to the presentations today and the solutions that we have in place. They have the necessary setup, and I would say that the last bit from what was outlined that might stall it is only the legal framework that needs to adapt and maybe is a bit slower. Other than that, I would say that we are pretty ready. And your mention of diversity in age and in beliefs, if a solution is made relatively accessible and easy to understand for the user, and if we, as we see, have companies that are willing to communicate in relatively simple terms with the end user and can provide a secure service, I cannot see there to be a reasonable doubt that we can actually achieve that.
Well, that sounds like a perfect optimistic note for us to start winding down on. We have reached our time limit for this event, so I guess I'll ask our viewers, if you have any questions for our panelists, then this is your last chance to submit them. But while we wait for any possible questions, my, I suppose, last question for my panelists would be, are you looking forward to TechChill this year?
Yes, definitely. How it can be otherwise, Round?
Yes, well, TechChill starts in 10 days with the event that will be spread across two weeks, so with lots of side events, including the aforementioned Internet of Things hackathon, sponsored by LNT. And of course, this is our warm-up event. So I think this is a really great note to jump into our 2 weeks of TechChill, and especially because digital transformation, what we've been talking about for this entire panel, is such a fundamental portion of the agenda this year. So certainly looking forward to seeing you all there. So I see that there aren't any questions from our viewers. So on that note, I would like to say thank you, panelists, for being here and for answering all of our questions and enlightening us about the reality and the future of digital solutions and trends that we can expect. So thank you for being here, and I guess I will hand it back over to Aris.
Yes, thank you, Julia. Thank you for moderating the panel, and thank you also to Sanita, Ilmars, and Rasa for taking part today, both with your keynotes and also in the panel discussion. It was great hearing from you, great hearing about some of the things that we can expect in the future as regards digital transformation. Now, as Julia already mentioned, this is a warm-up event for TechChill 2021. As mentioned before, we will kickstart it on May 7th with Baltic Tech Day. This opening event will be available for free for everyone, but afterwards, if you want to enjoy the full stage agenda on May 20 and May 21st, you're going to need a ticket. So if you're interested in learning more about digital transformation, Green New World, knowledge for growth, and also the human side of tech, please head over to our website, techchill.co, and you can grab your pass there. So we're going to definitely have a lot of interesting content, for example, just regards this digital transformation. If we're being a bit dramatic, we can say that that's actually the difference between death and survival for many companies. And we will have quite a few experienced speakers and business professionals that will be able to talk about these subjects. For example, we're going to have Marek Und, who has helped several startups in the Baltics to rapidly grow, for example, Bolt and TransferWise, which is now known just as Wise. Also, Anthony Canada, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Hopin. Hopin is the hottest event platform around now, and it actually be the fastest growing company or the biggest growth story that we're experiencing in the latest years, and it is now evaluated at $5.6 billion. And on top of that, we will also have Anastasia Olenika. She's the CEO of Twino, one of the hottest fintech brands in Europe, originating here from Latvia. So that and many more speakers you will be able to meet at TechChill 2021. We definitely hope to see all of you there. Tell your friends, tell your family, and thank you for joining us today. I hope you learned something, and see you in a week. Thank you.